Welcome back, everyone, to Real Estate 360 Live. I'm your host, Ryan Sloper, joined today by my guest, Louis Cammarosano, the general manager of HomeGain. Reminder, the show is designed and dedicated to building the D.C. Metro's markets, housing, and credit markets by giving you good free advice. If you ever have any questions, concerns, or real estate needs, the best number to reach out to us is 877-245-2030. That's 877-245-2030. That's the off-air phone number. Just leave your name, phone number, and contact information, and I'd be glad to get back to you by the end of business today. Or you can reach out to us via the web at realestate360live.com. That's realestate360live.com. So now it's time for this week's Market Movers. This is where we let you know what happened in the markets last week, as well as what can affect you this week that could, alter interest rates. And this segment was brought to you by HomeGain. HomeGain is the place to get you started buying or selling a home, finding a realtor, and getting real estate questions answered. Go to HomeGain.com today to see what I'm talking about. All you have to do is type in your home address, and you'll get an instant free estimate of your home's value online. It's a great way to monitor your home's value, and it's totally free. So when you get a chance, guys, check that out today at HomeGain.com. So obviously we have a shortened week this week because of Thanksgiving. So markets are going to be closed on Thursday and a shortened session on Friday. The week does have 3 housing market reports. October existing home sales on Monday, which I believe come out at 10 a.m. October housing starts and permits on Tuesday, along with the NAHB Housing Market Index. Obviously, I look for the existing home sales to be relatively unchanged, if not slightly worse. I know there's been a lot of people out there blaming that their sales might not be as great because of the hurricane. I don't know if you heard that, Louis. Right? They're always looking.
They're blaming the whole economy.
Right. They always want to blame it on a storm or something else other than it just being the general economy. So we have that. Also, weekly jobless claims, the University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Index, and October leading economic indicators will all be out on Wednesday. These issues and data are important, but, we still have the biggest overriding issue, which is the fiscal cliff that's being debated right now.
So Ryan, did you notice that they've taken the initial claims now? The expectations are now well over 400,000 again.
Yeah, how did that happen?
They're expecting 400. Well, it's because of Sandy. Everybody lost their jobs either in anticipation of, or because of the hurricane itself, or they couldn't go and file their claims because of Sandy, and that's just catch up now. Everybody's filing their claims, and in a few weeks it'll go back down again.
It's interesting you brought that up. I actually was reading somewhere too. I don't know if this was somewhere down in Florida or something like that. Someone was getting ready to file for unemployment or whatever, and they had told them that they're going to have to come back after the election. They weren't taking any more claims until after the election.
Well, I don't doubt that. That's not what I was getting at. What I'm saying is that because of the hurricane, there is some truth to the fact that people might not have been able to get out of or get to the place to file the claim. But, the manipulation you're talking about, I wouldn't put it past them.
Yeah, and it just shows you that you can't put too much stock in these numbers anyway. Obviously, you can get the general pulse of what's going on in the economy just by going out there every day and talking to people. Nobody's really confident in where we're headed. People are hopeful that jobs are just going to be created out of thin air, and that's just not going to be the case. Many of the rich
money's created out of thin air. Why not jobs?
Yeah, you would think that would be the next step. Maybe the Fed could just create their own jobs and put people to work for them as well. It seems that it's just that easy just to push a button and inject cash into the system. You should be able to do the same thing with jobs. What does it really matter if we go from 14, 16 trillion to 30 trillion? At the end of the day, these numbers
You're being sarcastic, but that is really what they end up doing, though.
Oh, I know, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like nobody really cares about these numbers. Is what I'm getting at.
That's the whole fiscal cliff. They're trying to avoid making the cuts.
Yeah, avoid making the cuts that are necessary.
And continue spending.
Right, so that we don't end up in a complete debacle that's going on in Greece right now.
We've already those numbers are already a debacle. It's just when the rest of the world wakes up and says, wait a minute, the United States owes $100 trillion, and the only way they can pay it back is by continuing to print money that they don't have.
devaluing the dollar over time, which inevitably is going to, to spur inflation. Now, I mean, everybody's like, well, I haven't really noticed much of a difference, with gas and food. I mean, and like I said, it's going to be gradual over time, but once this kicks in, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you start to see substantial increases, 20 to 30% a year.
It's the boiling frog syndrome right now. People don't realize that prices are going up and affecting the cost of living. I mean, and gas has been up, from $1.70 to close to $4.
Right, and I think what's happened is they've been paying those prices for such a long time. It's just like, they just accept that for what it is.
And also, consumers are also in debt, so they figure, I was in debt $5,000 last year. I'm in debt $7,000. What's the difference?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that being a consumer advocate, one of the things that you and I emphasize all the time is that okay, so this is these are the cards that we've been dealt right now. So what do we do? How do we protect ourselves? And one of the things that we talk about all the time is just trying to take advantage of the low fixed rate mortgages, 30-year fixed, so that you can protect yourself from that future inflation. Because if things get really bad, the one thing that remains constant, you would want it to be your housing costs, because it's normally the largest amount of money that you outlay every month. So
but if somehow you could lock down your energy and food costs at today's prices, that'd be great too. But really, the only thing you can do is lock down that housing cost, but the long-term low interest rate mortgage.
Yeah, and for most people, that's about anywhere from 25 to 40% of somebody's gross income. So that's a substantial chunk, and that's not even talking about the utility bills and everything else that come with it. That's just the housing payment. So it's important to take advantage of the low fixed rates. Now, many might say, well, I'm not sure if I'm planning on selling my house or not. Well, if you're in one of those situations where you could be moving in a year or two, or you might not be, you might still want to consider refinancing, because they do have options where you can do no closing costs refinances. So essentially what you're doing is you're going to be raising the rate up to compensate for the costs, but it's still going to be a cheaper rate, and if you happen to not move, then you're still taking advantage of the low fixed rates. I don't think that it's smart to sit around and try to figure out what's going to take place in the next 6 to 12 months, because, realistically, I don't think that rates should be as low as they are. And the only reason that they are is because of the manipulation by the Fed.
Once they stop, or they're forced to stop, they have to go up.
And I mean, and we're talking, okay, so we're in the mid 3% range. That's, on an average based upon your credit qualifications. You're looking at, they could jump up to 4.5%, 5% quickly, very quickly. I mean, there's nothing stopping them from doing so other than the Fed continuing to buy them.
Well, look at the cost of borrowing that countries like Greece have now. When they were part of the euro and they were considered, a good credit risk, they were in the low 3 or 4% range. And now they're in the 7, 8, 9% range.
And it's no coincidence that people are struggling to get their refinances or purchases to go through at the rates that we're at right now. You think that the banks really want to lend money out at the current rates?
Absolutely
not really. Yeah, I mean, long term, it's a terrible rate of return, and then you factor in future inflation, it's nothing.
It's all part of the bargain that they have to make in order for the Fed to continue to just basically give them money so they can then reinvest it in treasuries and keep the interest rates low.
And one of the big questions that I had, I want to say it was about a week ago, from a listener, Sam, who had said, okay, so, we hear you talking all the time that you should take advantage of the low fixed rates, and I'm, in the mid 5% range now. Do you think that it might be a smart idea to borrow against my 401k to, pay down my balance to get to where I can refinance? And now, I'm not a financial advisor or anything like that, but it's my personal opinion that if it was me in that situation and I was, at 5.5% or 6%, I would borrow money, because you can typically borrow it from retirement accounts at, somewhere around 5% or less, most of the time probably 3 or 4%, and to be able to take advantage of, rates somewhere in the 3% range, I would do that all day long, just because I know that I'm going to be paying back that mortgage over the next 30 years, and I'd like to lock that in as lowest cost as possible.
So what you're doing also is you're basically transferring your retirement money to your house.
Well, it's almost essentially like your own savings anyway. You know what I mean? You're moving that over.
But you're not subject, at least, to the stock market risk.
Absolutely, and you're not subject to that, and the fact that that retirement account you're essentially paying it back anyway. It's just it's another loan where, I mean, if you, in many people's cases, it might save somebody $400 or $500 a month on their mortgage. You could take that savings and pay that loan back relatively fast.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's something that I would recommend to people so that they can be back in a good position, maybe in as early as 2 years or so. But I do want to stress that I think that it's a great idea anytime that you can, if you have the ability, even if you can, borrow money from a family member or your 401k, anything that you can do to get yourself into a better financial position as we're moving through this recession, I think is smart. I always tell my clients that I think that it's important, you lock in at a low fixed rate. And, there's still certain cases where investors want to take adjustable rate mortgages because they're somewhat lower. But you know what? Investors, they understand the risk associated with those products. They understand that the rates could go up, they could come down, and they can, reap the rewards when they're low, and they just have to pay the price when they're higher. But if for just the average Joe, for just the person that's going to buy, their first home, the spreads aren't so different between them right now that I think it justifies going with an adjustable unless you knew you were going to be moving in the first year or two. We're coming up on a break, guys. When we come back, we're going to jump into the many questions from listeners. Stay right there when we come back.
Are you or someone you know looking to buy or sell a home? When you use a HomeGain Realtor to buy or sell a home, you can get $150. Visit HomeGain.com and click on the Promo 150 banner at the top of the page to get started. Compare HomeGain Realtors and choose your favorite. Complete your home purchase or sale transaction with a HomeGain Realtor, and HomeGain will pay you $150. Get started today by going to HomeGain.com.
You're listening to Real Estate 360 Live.